Publish your own podcast.
Self-addressed stamped envelope to the Children's Television Network, PBS, care of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood and the Sears Roebuck Foundation.
POW Box.
Scruff McGruff, Chicago, Illinois, 60652.
Or you can...
HOHOHO.
10134. Come on and zoom.
It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood, a beautiful day for a neighbor. Would you be mine? Could you be mine? I've always wanted to have a neighbor just like you. I've always wanted to live in a neighborhood with you.
It's a beautiful day in this neighborhood.
And it's a beautiful day in our podcast.
Please won't you beat it?
Okay. I don't usually say those parts. You can tell.
I'm Steven.
I'm Andrew.
And we're doing a podcast.
And it's fancy inside and out.
We're at episode 1176.
Wow. We did. Hard to believe it's already been 1,176 episodes.
It hasn't been that many, but it has been 300 episodes since our last episode.
So we've missed
300 episodes.
Probably about, well, no, more than a year. I guess it didn't run all year.
It's about 3 years have passed, or 4 years have passed since the War on Changers.
We're in color now.
We're in color.
The greatest change of all. And Mr. Rogers is also in color, so that's nice.
His drapes are ugly as an ugly thing.
I don't hate it.
I described them in my notes as being the color of algae.
Yeah, by that. That's fair. I mean, it's the 70s. That's the color things were in the 70s.
Like if Mr. Rogers were to not clean out his new fish tank for 3 weeks,
yeah.
I'd say that they'd be the color of those drapes.
Yeah, no, the walls are very beige.
Mm-hmm.
Even the sky outside is sort of a muted, muddy blue. It's very 70s.
But very beautiful day.
It's a beautiful day in his neighborhood, though.
Maybe not visibly, but...
It's beautiful on the inside.
Yeah. Anyways, Mr. Rogers comes in. He does a little singing. And then as he's taking off his shoes, he presents us with the question, do you ever puff?
Oh, yes.
Andrew, do you ever puff?
Yes. I puff. Much to your chagrin as the person who edits all my puffs out of this podcast.
But you don't smoke cigarettes.
No.
Which is what I thought he was asking in the beginning of this episode.
No, I don't smoke cigarettes. It would kill me. I just have all the symptoms of one who has smoked for years, which is to say, a terrible respiratory system which wants to kill me.
All right.
Not to put too fine a point on it.
Speaking of...
Putting too fine a point on it, that was on purpose, let's say.
Moving on to pens.
Yeah, Mr. Rogers wants to show us calligraphy, because he's been practicing calligraphy. He's filled, seems like an entire legal pad.
With like straight lines.
With his practicing.
Bumps, fancy writing practice, I guess, zigzags.
Yeah, a lot of upstrokes and downstrokes. It all looks like nonsense, but it's sort of explained. As he says, he's been taking a course at the college, I guess.
Just for grown-ups.
Yeah.
Just a class for
He's been taking a night school course.
Yeah, and Picture has footage of his adult learning.
Yeah, and he's much more conversational with Picture now.
Yeah, when he comes in, he just says, oh, look, it says hello.
Yeah. Hi, hey. Picture. There's no Picture on the wall.
Yeah.
Would you kindly show us all my trip to the adult learning annex where I learned how to write with a fountain pen?
Have you ever written... Hey. This is a very Mr. Rogers phrased question. But did you ever write with a fountain pen?
No, I've never written with a fountain pen.
Our class, I don't know, in grade 4 maybe.
Okay. So I thought this was going to be like an art college thing.
In grade 4, we went to the museum or something, and they had fountain pens, and it's like, this is how people used to write. And I couldn't understand it, because they were the worst pens I've ever touched. But looking at Mr. Rogers' experience, I think they just gave us garbage pens.
That is probably true to an extent. And I mean, this was the 70s when people still sort of used fountain pens.
Like this had like a lever to like suck the ink up into the thing, whereas mine was just looked like a sculpture of a fountain pen.
Oh, yeah.
And you dipped it in the ink, and then you touched it to the paper once, and all of the ink.
Yeah.
And you'd like scratch it, and you'd get half of a stroke of...
Yeah.
Terrible.
In this little documentary about, I mean, it's not a documentary, it's just a camera in the classroom with Mr. Rogers. But
Mr. Rogers does not look as good without the makeup crew.
Yeah, no, we
see.
see Mr. Rogers sort of in his natural habitat. It's weird to see like off-duty Mr. Rogers.
Yeah, I was like, who's this ugly man?
Yeah, he's got sort
like
of,
you don't think that he's really handsome in the show, but it's like, oh, this is like a totally different looking person.
Yeah, he's got, well, and the lighting is not favorable because it's the 70s. True. And they're still not great at shooting outside of a studio.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, he's not made up, and he's not wearing, like, he's just in a white collared shirt.
Still has a bow tie.
Still has a bow tie. He's still Mr. Rogers. He's still the person who he is. But there's definitely, it's just weird to see him, like, not engaging with the camera, I think. Like, he's just quietly listening to somebody talk, and it's weird to see him naturally. Yeah, so he does some calligraphy for us. He writes out hello.
Did you do the exercises that they
No,
described?
I didn't. I didn't have a fountain pen.
I didn't have a fountain pen either. I just used a golf pencil.
Okay. Oh, you really did. You've got everything here.
Yeah, I did the diagonal lines from... I didn't have lined paper, so I was sort of cheating. And then hard strokes downwards, and then bumps curving up and down.
Yeah.
I didn't get anything out of it.
No, well, I didn't try it. I do have a gel pen at my desk, and that might have evoked some of the style.
And then
we come back from picture, and Mr. Rogers makes a frame out of a piece of paper.
Yeah.
He says somebody showed him how to do this.
And then I'm expecting like this cool trick where you get a frame.
I mean, I guess really if you're 5, it's a cool trick. But it's
a really terrible frame.
Folds it in half and folds it in half again and rips a corner out of it and has to frame...
a vaguely square-shaped rip out of it.
Yeah, I mean, scissors, you could do a better hole. But
maybe this was before Crayola scissors, and kids weren't allowed to use scissors.
Kids weren't allowed to use scissors, maybe. When did Crayola invent scissors? We'll find out if there's ever a picture about how they make children's scissors, like they do with crayons.
Maybe we've already skipped it. We missed 300 episodes.
I know, that's the thing. We've got a lot of catching up to do on all the lore of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood.
We have got a lot of lore to cover.
We have.
Because we now arrive at the thing that I want to talk about.
Yeah, this is something else, isn't it?
Something else. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's a new way of accessing the land of make-believe.
Accessing and controlling the land of make-believe?
Yeah, yeah.
Because Mr. Rogers has a bunch of toys on the shelf, which he takes down, and it's model replicas of the various
buildings
locations
in the land of make-believe.
Maybe how Lady Elaine Fairchild rearranged them was she had these before.
Oh.
And she can like move them like little voodoo dolls.
This tracks, yeah.
And then at some point in the 300 lost episodes,
Mr. Rogers
confiscates these talismans.
Yeah, right. That makes that follows, yeah.
And he says, let's make believe.
Yeah, he
says, let's make believe that Grand-père gets a visit from Mr. McFeely at the Eiffel Tower. And then we go into the land of make-believe, and that happens. Yeah. So I don't know if this is actually happening in the land of make-believe. Or if we're just make-believing a non-canon story about the land of make-believe.
I mean, I think we've established with the suggestion of an imaginary gun earlier that imagination is real in the land of make-believe.
So Mr. Rogers has just sat down with these models, and he's decided, let's make Grand-père and Mr. McFeely meet. And so he just thinks it, and it happens.
Yeah, or does it happen and he thinks it?
You think that the actions of the citizens of make-believe control Mr. Rogers' behavior?
Maybe Mr. Rogers is just tuned into what happens in the land of make-believe, but at some point, which we've already seen.
So he's allowed to say, let's make believe.
At some point in the last 300 episodes, the timelines have moved out of sync. So now he is observing events before they happen in the land of make believe.
Yeah, because the trolley doesn't take us to make believe.
Yeah, the trolley is not involved this time.
Trolley doesn't show up at all.
Yeah, I mean it is the land of make believe.
Right.
So maybe it
is. But before we were observing the land of make believe and seeing what happens there through the power of imagination. Now we're using the power of imagination to dictate what happens.
Well, maybe we need to, because if we break down the words, make believe. You believe something and you make it.
I'm just saying we shouldn't be believing things that make other people do things.
Maybe...
Like,
maybe the land of make-believe makes you believe the things that happen there.
I don't know.
I don't know.
It's all pretty fishy.
Well, let's head over to the land of make-believe and see what is...
Do we take the trolley, though?
I mean, I think we better take the trolley, because Mr. Rogers doesn't go to the land of make-believe through the buildings. He just...
Right.
Yeah. I think the trolley is probably still the safest.
Alright, well, let's take the trolley.
I'm not messing around with no voodoo.
So here we are in the land of make-believe.
Here we are in the land of make-believe.
They've sort of stopped with the rail repairs ever since the whole just imagining to get there without...
Yeah, well, I mean, they have done some work, though.
Gotta support your trolley.
I can't tell if the Eiffel Tower is different or just...
in color.
Or just in color, exactly. I don't remember enough what it looked like before. The trolley tracks are different, though. It's much easier to get under them now, and there's a archway sort of beside the archway that the trolley comes through. There's one just past that that's person-sized. Other things have been moved around slightly, but...
Things have been moved around. We need a whole episode to discuss
I mean, they've moved around much less, and they've had 300 episodes to get used to it.
You think that they've moved all these landmarks really slowly so that no one starts a war.
Yeah, I mean, they're all still in the same order, right?
Right.
The tree is just a bit further out from the wall, I think.
So it's not really a war on changers, it's more a war on adjusters.
Yeah. Probably Lady Lane Fairchild just moved the tree an inch a day.
This is what I was saying.
King Friday never noticed.
Yeah. So this scene opens with Grand-père.
Grand-père and Dr. Bill.
Dr. Bill, who is not voiced by Mr. Rogers.
No, and is a platypus.
Yes. He's a platypus. Apparently, Grand-père is renting out the bottom floor of the Eiffel Tower for Dr. Bill's practice.
Yeah. No, this is. I don't know if this is the time to get into it or if we get into it a little bit. What kind of doctor do you think is Dr. Bill?
I was not given enough.
Yeah, we weren't given a ton to work with. I mean, the obvious assumption is sort of general practitioner, because that's the most baseline kind of doctor. But his hair, he has sort of a... I mean, really, he's
Einstein?
got a Professor Von Drake look about him. His sort of general look gives me sort of a psychiatric doctor vibe to him.
Mm-hmm. He does have a Scottish accent, even though he's like a platypus.
That's true. Hadn't thought about that.
I would expect a platypus to be Australian, but you never know.
Well, but as we know, most ducks are Scottish, if Disney has taught us anything.
Right, but this is a platypus. Mr. McFeely arrives after Dr. Bill has left, and...
he's got some mail.
Yeah, Mr. McFeely, this is the other thing that I wanted to talk about.
Uh-huh.
He's really changed in 300 episodes.
He's mellowed out a lot.
Like, if this were episodes 1 through 5, he'd be like, Oh, here we go, Grand-père, here's your letter, okay, bye, speedy delivery to you, bye. And then he'd be gone.
I mean, he still sort of has that... He still
has the cadence, yeah.
He still has the cadence that kind of gives me a panic attack every time.
But in this one,
he comes in the room.
In this episode, he gives Grand-père his letter. He reads it to him.
It's a scroll with a ribbon.
They
chat for a bit.
When he leaves, he walks his bike away instead of getting on and biking away.
That's
And he's in no hurry to say goodbye. He's like, oh wait, how do I say goodbye in French?
He's more interested in the world around him now.
At some point in the last 300 episodes, I think Mr. Rogers had that intervention.
Yeah, he also doesn't ask for money for the delivery. He doesn't ask for 1 or a 2 or a 3.
He doesn't ask for money for the delivery because the first half of the delivery, the scroll with the letter, he takes back
with him,
and puts in his...
I noticed that.
He doesn't give it, he just shows it to Grand-père and then keeps it.
Yeah, but we're all sort of getting it. So he has a scroll to deliver to Grand-père.
Mm-hmm.
Grand-père asks him in French if he would read it. Voulez-vous lit la lettre?
He reads it in English.
Something like that. Well, this ends up being kind of a cruel prank that Grand-père plays. Grand-père plays on Mr. McFeely, because Mr. McFeely is then forced to read a letter to him, which is in French, a language which Mr. McFeely does not speak.
Oh, I didn't catch that.
No, the letter is in French.
I was writing down things I noticed about.
Oh no, he opens up this scroll.
Mr. McFeely's.
It's in French. It says, Mon cher grand-père, j'arrive mercredi. My French is not good, but basically he's sort of sounding his way through these French words he doesn't understand, and then Grand-père is translating them. And basically, it's...
Grand-père just loves messing with the English.
Yeah, Grand-père is a whimsical jackanape. But it's a letter from his granddaughter.
Colette the tiger.
Yes. From
Paris.
Yeah, from whom his name comes, his granddaughter. As far as... I don't know if Colette has showed up.
No, this seems like the first episode.
It certainly feels like this is the introduction of Colette the tiger. So up until now, they've just been calling him Grand-père without having ever met his petite fille, his granddaughter.
So Mr. McFeely also delivers a framed portrait of Colette.
Yeah.
Because in this letter to say, I'm coming this week to visit you, also, here's a framed portrait of me.
Yeah. Which is life-size or larger than life-size because these are all puppets.
It's very opulent, yes.
Yeah, it's very opulent. Luckily, Grand-père has a shelf.
So he leaves the framed portrait with
for this framed portrait.
Grand-père, and he takes the letter back, I guess, to recycle or learn French with.
I maybe. So he learns the French word for au revoir, says it badly, and then bids au revoir to Grand-père, who spends a few minutes just sort of admiring this picture of his granddaughter.
At which point, Henrietta Pussycat comes in.
Henrietta Pussycat comes in. Now, she's downstairs. I get the impression that she was just at Dr. Bill's.
Yeah, maybe she's like, if he is a psychiatrist, maybe she's...
This is why I'm thinking psychiatrist, because I'm starting to have serious concerns about Henrietta Pussycat.
Yeah.
I mean, the way she talks is...
I mean, this whole scene should have been subtitled. We've got one guy speaking mostly French, and
one Carol speaking mostly cat.
And Henrietta Pussycat speaking mostly meows with broken English interspersed.
Yeah, it is.
There's a great shot in this scene where the camera zooms into a close-up.
She's saying meow right into camera.
Like it cuts in as if she's going to say something important, and then she says meow 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 meow. Meow, meow, meow. And then it cuts back to a wide shot.
This is not... Henrietta Pussycat's construction...
Pinky and Thumbkin barely...
is not up to the task of selling the emotional weight of this scene. But anyway, she leaves...
Yes, Grand-père shows Henrietta Pussycat this portrait of Colette.
And then Henrietta Pussycat heads very quickly on her way. Because she's apparently already there when we pan over to X the Owl's treehouse, where Henrietta also lives.
In the schoolhouse attached.
In the schoolhouse treehouse attached. So Lady Aberlin comes by.
Yeah, she rings Henrietta Pussycat's doorbell multiple times.
Yeah, is the doorbell new?
I don't remember.
I remember her door being knocked on last time somebody went to see them.
It's true. So the bell gets rung multiple times. Lady Aberlin has no interest in talking to X the Owl. She just keeps trying Henrietta. I don't know what urgent business.
Yeah, we never find out. Eventually X the Owl comes, because I guess he hears the bell, and they talk about how he's pretty sure he heard Henrietta come home.
Yeah, he says, I'm pretty sure that she just came home, but I know she's there.
Came back from Dr. Bill's, so she was definitely to see the doctor for well, he doesn't live there, so it must be for medical reasons.
Yeah.
So they talk about that for a bit. They try to listen to see what Henrietta's doing in there.
Definitely no appreciation for boundaries.
Yeah.
Lady Aberlin and X the Owl. They're like,
wood walls in the land of make-believe.
Let's listen to her door. I definitely hear her doing something, but I can't really tell what she's doing.
Yeah.
And then they're like...
It doesn't even go anywhere, really, because they never, she's... crying or something. No, they're just like, I don't know what that sound is.
X the Owl says, well, maybe she's in the back of her house, and that's why she hasn't answered the door yet. Because it's such a long trip, those 12 inches from the back of the house.
That whole foot. You can see, I'm sure you can see you can see the back wall from the front door.
Mm-hmm. X the Owl gets really forceful.
He gets kind of SWAT teamy.
Yeah, he sounded like... It sounds like
a hostage negotiation.
Yeah, like a recording of like police who are we're about to bust down the door.
Yeah.
So
Henrietta Pussycat,
get your hands above your head.
Come out there right now if you're in there.
Yeah. a little distressing.
X the Owl is
He used his police officer voice, I said.
Yeah, X the Owl is not a people person, I don't think. I mean, he likes people. He is socially awkward.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So Henrietta pops out finally, even though her door was swinging open prior to this.
Yeah, I don't know that was weird.
She comes out and she's dressed in like a French Renaissance costume.
Yeah, she's got a big hat. She's got a big scarf. She's got like light blue lipstick, I think.
Yeah.
Which is weird, not least of all because her lips are furry.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and they don't even recognize her at first.
No, they're like, who is this person?
Who's this person?
What strange...
Yeah, you're not Daniel Tiger or the other cats in this town.
And so Henrietta Pussycat is speaking in French.
Yeah.
And she says...
and meows. She's speaking half meows, half French.
Here's the thing.
In much the way she speaks half meows, half English.
She says, je suis Henrietta.
Yeah.
And then they're like, what does that mean? And then she reiterates, meow meow Henrietta.
Oh.
She speaks better French than she does English.
Well, maybe that's why she has this apparent connection with Grand-père. Yeah, and she's so basically what's happened is she's dolled herself up because I guess she's jealous of how pretty Colette looks in her picture.
Mm-hmm. And Lady Aberlin and X the Owl, they seem to catch on to this before that's really revealed.
I mean,
and
it's...
Like when
they know that she's insecure about her looks for some reason, which I think is pretty clear. I mean, I wrote down here somewhere, I think Henrietta is having a fairly troubling breakdown, is what I wrote.
I mean, yes, and that's definitely true. But at first she just comes out and they're like, oh wow, you look so pretty today, Henrietta.
Well, first they're like, who are you? And then they're like, oh, it's Henrietta. I didn't even recognize you. You look nice today.
But then they're like, go back to how you used to be.
Yeah, they're very quickly. They're like, you look very nice, but I like the way you look
Whatever
before.
you do, Henrietta, don't experiment with style.
Yeah, well look, change is still a hot button issue in the land of make-believe.
It's true.
Yeah.
They had a whole war over that.
Yeah, so if somebody's going to start changing the way they look, they're...
Still some old war wounds left from 300 episodes ago.
Yeah, I mean, it's a hot button issue, right? Apartheid wasn't cured in a day in South Africa.
X the Owl describes Henrietta as being gussied up.
Yeah, because he's the last of the Southern gentlemen.
And X the Owl also refers to Lady Aberlin as Lady Aberlina.
Yeah,
which
that was weird.
Why did he get her name wrong?
I don't know.
Mr. Rogers, the voice of X the Owl, has been using Lady Aberlin's name for over 300 episodes.
I feel like it's an X the Owl thing. I think X the Owl is either he just likes nicknames that way, or it's just another extension of his weird people skills.
Anyways, Lady Aberlin heads on her way, runs into Mr. McFeely, who I noticed more about Mr. McFeely.
Okay.
Now that we're in color, it's really obvious that
he's not as old as he perpetrates to be.
He's not an old man at all.
No.
He's a young man with a fake gray mustache and a fake gray wig.
I mean, it's still 71. I think we will find he ages into the role come the mid-90s. But he is...
But what's weird about his hair is that, like, normally people with gray hair, it's because they have some white hair that combines with their black hair. And from most distances, it looks gray.
It grays out.
Mr. McFeely just has, like, dyed gray hair.
And, like, a very fuzzy mustache. Very fluffy.
Yes.
Like, this is a bit of like...
And, like, the fake...
rabbit pelt.
The fake sideburns that are, like... thick and they look like pieces. They look like pieces of felt coming down.
Yeah, suspiciously so. So he explained. He tells everyone the exciting news, not the mailman you want if you're getting secret. I mean, I guess don't ask the mailman to read your letter to you.
He knew it was a picture before he opened the package for Grand-père.
I think you could feel that frame.
I guess you might be able to feel
But yeah,
frame.
Mr. McFeely...
He reads your mail.
He reads your mail. He knew what the note in the box was. The note about the punch clock was inside the box, and he knew it was there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Mr. McFeely's going through your mail. He's going into your house. He's hiding balloons.
And then he's telling everyone he meets the contents of the mail.
Yeah. So he passes by Lady Aberlin. coming from I don't know where, because there's nothing over there, but like by the time they run into each other, it's the castle and the Eiffel Tower. And we saw him leave the Eiffel Tower. He's only just now coming from that same direction.
We saw him leave the Eiffel Tower to the left, and he's now approaching from the Eiffel Tower from the left. I don't even have any notes here.
Mr. McFeely tells Lady Aberlin that Grand-père's granddaughter, Colette, is coming, and she's very pretty. And Lady Aberlin puts it together immediately. Henrietta Pussycat saw that and is very insecure about her looks.
She's worried that X the Owl is gonna fall for the new prettiest cat in town.
Maybe, yeah. Or maybe she's just like maybe her thing, like we've missed a lot of world building, I imagine, on Henrietta. Maybe her deal is, she's the pretty one in town.
Maybe.
I mean, she's one of, if like discounting humans, the women in town are, like, tell me if I'm missing anybody, Henrietta Pussycat and Lady Elaine Fairchild. And Lady Elaine Fairchild does not care what she looks like. So it's basically Henrietta Pussycat, that ratty Victorian attic puppet, is the belle of the ball.
And then we abruptly shoot back to the real world because there's no trolley to take us there.
We just iris out, and we're back in Mr. Rogers' house, where he sort of goes over what's happened. And
I mean, is that how we're going to get there? Or are we?
No, we better take the trolley.
Or are we going to take the trolley?
I don't know how you take an iris. I'm not an animaniac.
All right, well, trolley away.
Okay. Plus, we have this song written up and everything.
Trolley arrive.
So we're back in Mr. Rogers' house. He talks about sort of what's happened. And then, Lady Aberlin arrives.
Yeah,
Betty Aberlin arrives.
Mr. Rogers' back door bell rings.
Right.
And it's Betty Aberlin.
Who is Lady Aberlin, we've established. And Mr. Rogers just calls her Betty Aberlin outside of the context of the Land of Make-Believe.
But she made excellent time from the Land of Make-Believe. Or are we no longer make-believing in real time?
Nobody, at no point does she make reference to any of the fairly troubling things that happened in the Land of Make-Believe.
Yeah, if this was happening in episode 5, she'd come in and say, Henrietta's having some trouble, so I thought I'd stop by. In this one, it's like they're two different people.
There was discussion happening in very hushed tones with X the Owl and her about Henrietta's nervous breakdown.
Mm-hmm.
But here it is just not addressed. So I don't know if, it's not definitive proof that there is no longer crossover. I assume there's crossover because that was established
somewhere in the 300 episodes.
And by God, so this is not the evidence on which I am going to pose that the Land of Make-Believe is some sort of imaginary place. That would be absurd. But it is curious that she doesn't reference the things that just happened to her in it, mere seconds ago.
So Betty Aberlin comes in, and Mr. Rogers shows her that he's been practicing his calligraphy, or fancy writing, and Betty Aberlin's like, I didn't take a class, but I like to do fancy writing. So she sits down and does a whole bunch of different writing styles.
If you went to middle school with girls,
I did.
You are familiar then probably with this genre of writing that she does.
Yeah, I wasn't a big fan of all of them, although some of the letter positionings were really nice. I like the way that the L's were interlocked and the O's
and the O up top. It's all a lot of curly Q's or real straight things or real big. I mean, she's just sort of going nuts on it.
In any case, Mr. Rogers felt as though he had been showed up.
Yeah, she writes hello, hello a couple times and then goodbye and a couple birds flying away because she has to fly away.
Yeah.
And leaves. And then Mr. Rogers is kind of genuinely hurt in a weird way.
Well, hold that thought, because I thought it was interesting how the scene played out because Betty Aberlin comes in, immediately sits down and starts doing fancy writing. She writes the word hello 3 times, and then she slowly starts to write something. It starts with a G. OODBYE. Bye, I'm leaving. This seems to be the length of all of the visits that Mr. Rogers gets from his neighbors.
I mean, he's only on his lunch for 30 minutes before he has to get back to work. But yeah, Mr. Rogers is genuinely kind of sad and disappointed. He's like, oh wow, she's real good at fancy writing.
He says it kind of takes the fun out of it when somebody does something that you've been practicing and they do a way better job.
And boy, I get it. But you don't usually see this much emotional vulnerability from Mr. Rogers.
Well, what you need to understand is Mr. Rogers paid money to a community college
it's true.
for this class that essentially told him to fill a whole page with upside down U's. And then this lady comes in. Sorry, this Betty comes in and she just says, "Oh, I haven't taken a class, but I like that," and does a way better job.
Yeah.
And he's like, "I paid money for this."
I mean, debatably. I mean, hers is sort of more artistic letter forms. Mr. Rogers has some pretty good penmanship.
Mm-hmm.
He's doing some real nice handwriting. The legal pad is paying off. But it's weird to see usually Mr. Rogers is sort of above it all in explaining how feelings work, but not really falling victim. Like, he has emotions.
Yeah,
but they're never in control of him. He feels
strongly about fences.
Yeah. Yeah, he's very in touch with his emotions, but it's not often that his emotions get the best of him. But here we see him sort of express some genuine disappointment, I guess, at how quickly he feels shown up by Betty Aberlin. But then he's also over it as quickly as possible. He's like, well, I'll keep practicing and I'll get better. And
he says he's going to practice, but really after he saw Betty Aberlin do it, he's like, I'm done with this.
I mean, look, her great uncle is King Friday. Mm-hmm. Mr. Rogers, a poor white-collar working stiff, can't compete with a royal education. She's being tutored by the finest calligraphers in the kingdom.
Or she was, before somewhere in the last 300 episodes, the timeline split and she became two different people.
I mean, I still don't see enough evidence. I am prepared to be proven wrong on this, but I don't think that's happened yet. So I'm maintaining the initial status quo.
Well, what do you think, podcast neighbors?
Oh,
we'll see if anything explains it in the next episode.
Yeah, we'll see what happens on day 2 leading up to Colette's grand arrival. Or if this week's going to be all about Henrietta having a nervous breakdown.
I hope so. Join us next time in episode 1177.
Ooh.
Volume 1, episode 6 of the Amazon Best Of collection. Our theme song was provided by Dan Brisbane,
who was fancy inside and out.
And our trolley tune was made by Rindale.
I've never met them, but I bet they're fancy.
Anyways, we'll be back when the week is new.
We'll have more ideas for you.
I know I'll have things that I want to talk about.
I will too.
Sounds right.
Yeah.
Cool.
So let's make the most of this beautiful day. Since we're together, we might as well say, would you be mine? Could you be mine? Won't you please? Won't you please? Please, won't you be my neighbor? Won't you please? Won't you please? Please, won't you be my podcast?
Henrietta Pussycat. Come out of your house. If you are in your house, Henrietta Pussycat, open your door and come out of your house.